I realise every time I make a video it's never quite eye level, so just in case you're wondering, to start off like that. This video is about the subject of objectification and my stance on it. Now, one thing I try to say in a lot of my videos is that it's difficult to encompass everything I want to say within 15 minutes, and that might be the case here. It may be hard to do that, to include everything I want to say. So I'll just say what I can. I want to clarify my stance on this subject because I've made a few videos which I believe maybe I could have worded slightly better. It's nothing to do with a change of heart or a change of mind. I stand by what I said, but perhaps I didn't really, perhaps I could have used better wording, let's put it that way. So in this video I just want to make a clarification of what my stance is on this, because it's a pretty topical subject. You hear it all the time. Not the headline obviously, but it's something that does come up quite a lot in the press about the subject of objectification, almost universally concerning objectification of women. And I have argued that I believe the term is overused. Now, I do believe that. I do believe it's overused. But perhaps I was wrong to imply that I believe it's completely wrong. Let me explain the context in which I'm speaking. The Sun's attracted controversy once again because it's used the front page to use a topless girl. Well, she's covering her breasts with her arm, but she's basically topless, and it's saying page 3 versus breast cancer. So what they're doing is taking an ostensibly light-hearted approach to what is a serious subject, because 12,000 women die a year from this disease. So what the Sun seems to be doing is saying, oh look, we're taking on a good cause, but I can't help thinking there's some selfish motivation behind that, in a way to legitimize the existence of page 3, which is a long-standing issue of feminist critique. Now, I've often spoken out against feminism and a lot of what I would argue are double standards. On the page 3 issue, I do see the point they make with that, because the Sun, as much as I think it's total trash, it's a paper I despise. I have to acknowledge it is a newspaper. That's, I mean, I don't think it's, I would argue it's not a newspaper, but realistically it's meant to be a family newspaper, and they have a topless young woman on page 3 that can be seen at counter level where children can see. You know, you can imagine a situation, a family go into, or a parent and their child go into newsagents. The parents sort of browsing, looking to buy something else. The child, all that they have to do is sort of, you know, children are nosy, they look around, they'll just look and think, oh, there's page 3, topless girl. Now, some would say, well, it's a natural thing. Of course it's natural, but not in that context it's not. Because page 3, let's be honest, is used solely to titillate male readers. Now, I like a pair of breasts as much as the next man. I'm a heterosexual man. I'm not a robot. Of course, a young, attractive woman showing her breasts is not going to be unappealing to me. But it has no place in a newspaper at all. It's absolutely got nothing to do with news. I remember there used to be a thing that some would do where they'd have speech bubbles what the girls were saying. Maybe it was their own opinions, I don't know, but it just looked really pathetic. It looked like they were, especially when they were blending serious subjects with some topless young woman, it was just completely tasteless. Like they would have a speech bubble, something like this. This isn't a direct example, but it's the sort of thing they would do. Kaylee from Essex believes that the terrible killings in Darfur must be condemned by the world. That sort of thing was just totally tasteless. You know, to combine a serious subject with trying to titillate male readers. Page 3 went on under Rebecca Brooks as well, who was of course a woman editor. But I think that was purely down to business. She realised if she took away page 3, there'd be a loss in profits. For me, the issue is not about whether or not it's natural. Straight men are going to like a pair of breasts. That is human nature. So I don't think it's so much as not natural, it's more that it's inappropriate in that situation. Also, some of these girls are pretty young. They have used 18-year-old topless models, for want of a better term. So the Sun's pretty hypocritical to accuse anyone of being perverted, because that is really pushing the boundaries to get a young woman who... Now, I've argued that a lot of this is down to free choice. I still think 18 is a bit young, and I still think that it's just got no purpose whatsoever. Now, the girl temporarily might feel, oh, this is great, I'm getting all this attention, I'm a sexy girl, men love it. But later in life she may regret that, and it's really... I just think it's pointless. It has no purpose in a national newspaper, especially when you have a report underneath about some atrocity in a war zone, or something that just... it's completely tasteless. Not that tabloids have taste, but I think that's completely out of place. So on this occasion I can see why feminists take an issue with that, and I'm not a feminist. But about the wider subject of objectification, I stand by my overriding view that it's an overused concept. And the problem I have with this argument is that ultimately it gets into a sort of mind control. It's like saying that if you think about sexuality, then you're objectifying someone. That's essentially what it comes down to. When you see a music video and a star like Beyonce or Katy Perry, as they've both recently done, use their sexuality, that is something that you don't have to agree with, but you cannot ignore the fact that powerful women celebrities who choose to do that are entirely responsible for the message that they are sending out, i.e., this is my sexuality and I'm doing it for a purpose. Now, there's plenty of talented female singers who don't rely on their sexuality, but many do. And the problem I have with the objectification argument is that feminists blame men for it. Feminists never criticise those artists themselves. They'll say, oh, this is a typical example of how these perverted men are objectifying women. They'll never say, like, oh, some powerful women choose to use their sexuality and I don't agree with it, but that's their business. You'll never hear a feminist say that. So I do have a problem with what I would argue is feminists trying to control how other people think. They're controlling what they think other women should and shouldn't do with their body, and they are controlling whether or not men choose to look or choose to enjoy that, get titillated by it. You know, denying sexuality is denying human nature, and I honestly am skeptical of anyone who honestly claims that they never have sexual ideas in their mind. I really think, if you honestly can say that, then you must be a robot. So actually all objectification really is a de facto state of things that everyone thinks in their own mind anyway. I mean, whether you would have these videos or not, men are still going to think about sex. That's the point. And I'm sure any honest heterosexual woman would often think of some hunk that she would fancy. You know, denying this is just denying our humanity. So I think there's times that the issue of objectification is a valid problem, and certainly there is an argument to be made that a lot of young women have image issues that can lead to serious health problems. In no way do I underestimate that. I just have a problem with controlling an entire industry or an entire it could be anything, films, you know, it's used in that as well, this claim of objectification. It seems to me, honestly, this is how it comes across, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, this is just how it comes across. I honestly think that if men enjoy sexuality in any way, if they enjoy the female figure in any way, feminists will turn around and say it's objectification. I mean, feminists honestly seem to look as if they're trying to find reasons to be offended. The human body is a natural thing. Why should we shun it? Why should we say that it's not natural just because it's in this context? Okay, I've mentioned the sun thing. I do think that's out of place because it's supposed to be a newspaper, not mild porn. But where I would defend usage of sexuality is in things like music videos, because the artist is choosing to sell it in that way. And she, or sometimes he, have a right to do that. If you don't like it, don't buy the record. Though it's unfair to always say that because some people have low confidence and they might then reflect on themselves, then an industry should be controlled. It's a bit like saying, smokers suing tobacco companies because they've chosen to have a smoke. What about personal responsibility here? I mean, if women look at music videos and it makes them feel bad about themselves, I'm sorry for them, and I hope they can feel better, but it's unfair to blame the artist for that, or to blame the whole music industry. Unless you're a robot, you have to take some personal responsibility. Don't listen to that rubbish. Don't watch those videos if it makes you feel bad about yourself. But when feminists say that a whole industry should be policed, it comes down to a sort of authoritarian control. I.e., they don't like something, let's ban it. That is basically what feminist arguments come down to. And it does bother me, because it does seem to be that if a man dares enjoy female sexuality in a public context, i.e. if it's a music video or a film, men have to be very careful what they say these days. If I was to turn around and say, oh, that girl's hot, like if I'm talking about an actress or something, feminists would say, oh, you only care about her sexuality. And it's just, that sort of thinking really irks me off, because I'm a heterosexual man. So telling me that I shouldn't think about female sexuality is just telling me to be a robot. There's a difference between that and men who can't control themselves, and for example then you get into areas of sexual harassment and so on. Those are things that are very serious, and they should be taken legitimately as a problem. But I do think there's a huge difference between that and the whole argument around objectification. Sexual harassment is sexual harassment. It's wrong. And no woman should have to go through that, or in some cases men. But another thing about objectification, it's wrong to say it's entirely about women. You do get circumstances, especially in women's magazines, where men are arguably objectified. And there's enormous pressure put on men. I've argued before that men face a unique pressure in terms of being financially strong. Women don't face that same sort of pressure. A man who has no money is seen as a deadbeat. Women don't face that same sort of okay, there is the whole gold digger claim, which sometimes is overused as well, but the point I'm making is people need to stop being such bloody control freaks and let other people just get on with their lives and enjoy their lives. So I would argue, for example, take lap dancing for instance. Women who are involved in that, yeah, sometimes there's been a report recently, for example, saying that students do it to pay off the debt. Well, the idea that that's the only option available is wrong and misleading. They choose to do it. Is it ideal work? Maybe not. But in the end of the day, they are being paid. This is not slave labour. This is not exploitation in the way that people trafficking is. It's really not. And when we lump it all together, that's dangerous, because it then trivialises more serious things like people trafficking. So for example, if a woman in her mid-early 20s does lap dancing, maybe it's not her ideal job. I'm sure it's not. But in those circumstances, men aren't allowed to touch them. They do get paid, and it's a choice that they've made to get money. And yeah, men enjoy it because men enjoy the female form. I honestly see no difference between that and Chippendales. There may be young men involved as Chippendales for exactly the same reason, but you'll never hear feminists talking about that. It might well be uncomfortable for a young man to have lots of middle-aged women screaming at him in that way. It might make him uncomfortable. It would certainly make me uncomfortable if I had 20 or so half-drunk middle-aged women screaming at me. But the point is here, it's down to the sort of policing of what people should and shouldn't enjoy in terms of sexuality. Now, of course, there's areas like rape and sexual harassment which are totally wrong. But I have a problem when objectification is put into the same bracket as those sort of areas. I really do think that this issue of objectification is a sort of, in areas it is a valid problem, but more often than not it's just basically a way for feminists to try and control how other people think and what other people do.